Good morning and welcome to another Tuesday edition of your Breakfast on Leadership Television inside Nigeria. My name is Winifred Weber. Today is Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. And of course, as we normally do on the program, we are looking at what the papers are saying, national papers that is in Nigeria, including Nigeria's most influential leadership. Let's go there. Let's see what leadership it has on its menu this Tuesday. Leadership's leading story says electoral reforms, political parties, stakeholders want INEC unbundled. Electoral reforms, political parties, stakeholders want INEC unbundled. Seek new organ to register monitor parties. Throw weight behind bill, credible election most important according to civil society organizations, CSOs. Leading story today on Leadership, Tuesday edition of the paper. Electoral reforms, political parties, stakeholders want INEC unbundled. Seek new organ to register monitor parties. Throw weight behind bill. Credible election most important, CSOs. Riders to that leading story today on Leadership newspaper. Of course, we have other stories on the cover of Leadership, and we are not leaving out the trending story as at this moment. Since yesterday the news broke, of course, Leadership also captured it on its cover. Rivers lawmaker Sef Fubara deputy impeachment notice is the leading story in most of the other papers we have on our menu, and even those we don't have on our menu this Tuesday. Rivers lawmaker Sef Fubara deputy impeachment notice. The story runs on page 7 of Leadership. Tinubu appoints Kuka as Kacha Varsity Pro Chancellor. Senate dismisses Natasha's arrest allegation. Grand rent. Wike revokes 4,794 land titles. Wike is the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT. Grand rent. Wike revokes 4,794 land titles. Story runs on page 7 of Leadership. It's also a leading story on other papers on our menu this Tuesday. Trump orders Voice of America shuts down is a story that runs on page 4 of Leadership. Trump orders Voice of America shuts down. Now we move towards the business boss, towards the masthead of Leadership. We'll go to the business boss of the paper. And the business news today says inflation slows for second time to 23.2% after rebasing. Inflation slows for second time to 23.2% after rebasing. Let's get some highlights from that story, which continues on the cover. Nigeria's headline inflation rate eased to 23.2% year-on-year in February 2025, compared with January, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, NBS, said on Monday. This is the second consecutive drop after the MBS changed its methodology. The MBS stated that the inflation figure eased in February, a month after it rebased its consumer price index to reflect changes in consumption patterns. The Nigerian inflation figure was adjusted sharply from 34.80% in December to 24.48% in January, the first major drop in over a decade after the National Bureau of Statistics rebasing exercise to update data with 2024 as the base year instead of 2009. Leading story on the business boss, inflation slows for second time to 23.2% after rebasing. Leading story on the business boss once again this Tuesday. That takes us to a story about the masthead countdown to Leadership's Grand Conference Award ceremony. Absate says Leadership Award will motivate us to push boundaries. That is an awardee giving the Company of the Year Award by Leadership Media Group. From that, we move to the page 3 of Leadership, where we have our stand. Today's stand is on more security for NAFDAC operatives. More security for NAFDAC operatives. Recently, the Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drugs Administration Control, NAFDAC, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, raised the alarm over alleged threats to her life by people suspected to be cartels in the fake drug business. The DG also called for increased protection for herself and her staff who have faced various threats, including kidnappings and physical attacks. We move towards the solution, towards the end of that stand. And the leadership says, in view of the harmful effects of fake medications on lives of innocent Nigerians, the Nigerian government, through the National Assembly, should urgently consider the proposal by the Director General of the agency, Professor Adeyeye, for death penalty for offenders. This issue of fake drugs is a matter of national security, which should not be taken for granted. It's on this note that this newspaper is calling for collaboration among government agencies to curb the sale of fake drugs, medical products. We are also of the view that NAFDAC and other regulatory agencies saddled with the responsibility of curbing the menace of counterfeit drugs as well as substandard products on our menu, talking about the imbroglio, the crisis tearing down the Rivers State House of Assembly and the governor, Fubara. It says, Rivers crisis, Assembly serves Governor Fubara, deputy, notice of misconduct. Governor says we haven't received notice, says state facing gloomy period as lawmakers' actions could cause severe collateral damage. Plots to ask Governor early July get boost. 4 emerging scenarios, Wike's house not attacked, burnt, police. Of course, this is a response to the story that was trending on the social media that the FCT minister was set ablaze. But the minister in response says it's not true. Lawyers insist on due process for impeaching a governor. Riders to the leading story on today's Vanguard newspaper. Rivers crisis, Assembly serves Governor Fubara, deputy, notice of misconduct. Party primaries, NAN's most amending 2022 electoral act. That is the leading story on leadership today, Tuesday, March 18, 2025. Party primaries, NAN's, that is National Assembly, most amending 2022 electoral act. The story runs on page 10 of Vanguard. Protest rocks Abuja over Benue judicial crisis. Few subsidy beneficiaries ganged up against Tinubu's government at inception. Coming from Senate leader. Few subsidy beneficiaries ganged up against Tinubu's government at inception. That takes us to sports news. 2026 World Cup qualifier. Eagles hit Kigali camp ahead of Rwanda clash. From there, we move to the stories about the masthead of Vanguard, why Nigerian ports are not competitive shipping firms. Grand rent, Wike revokes 4,794 land titles after over 40 years. Court to AGF, you have no power to prosecute electoral offenders. Ex-Governor El-Rufai traumatized after losing ministerial slot, coming from APC. And that concludes review of front headline stories on Vanguard this Tuesday, March 18, 2025. For more, don't forget to log into the website of Vanguard. And from Vanguard, we move over to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is this day. This day is also talking Rivers crisis. It says, finally, Rivers State Assembly begins impeachment process against Fubara Odu, that is the deputy. He accuses him of abuses, deputy of misconduct. Governor denies frustrating Supreme Court verdict. Leading story today on this day newspaper, just as we had in the paper before it, Vanguard. Finally, Rivers State Assembly begins impeachment process against Fubara Odu. Accuses him of abuses, deputy of misconduct. Governor denies frustrating Supreme Court verdict. The story continues on the cover, just underneath that caption. For more, you log into the website of THISDAY. But just before you do that, we still have other stories on the cover of THISDAY to review this Tuesday. Inflation declines to 23.18% amid lower food energy prices. Inflation declines to 23.18% amid lower food energy prices, highest in Edo, Enugu, Sokoto, others. The story also continues just underneath the caption. Nigeria's economy has turned the corner, VP says at IFTA with Tinubu as leadership. That is breaking up fast yesterday. The vice president says Nigeria's economy has turned the corner. Above the masthead of this day, Dangote to build 80 million MTA cement plant in Itori, largest seaport at Olokola in Ogun State. Says Abiodun's vision policies brought him back to the state. Alleges his factory was pulled down twice by Amosun's government. You can't bully, blackmail, or compromise me, Amosun tells Dangote in response to that. Well, with that, we conclude review of front headline stories on this day newspaper this Tuesday. For more, don't forget to log into the website of this day, www.thisdaylive.com. From this day, we move over to the next paper, still talking Rivers politics, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian says eyes on Rivers CJ as impeachment plot thickens against Fubara deputy. And underneath that story, we have the pictures of President Bola Tinubu. We have pictures of the governor, the state governor, Fubara. We have Wike, the FCT minister. We have Amawule, the speaker of the House, Rivers State House of Assembly. And we have Kekere Ekun, the CJN of Nigeria, Chief Justice of Nigeria. These pictures just beneath the leading story on The Guardian, eyes on Rivers CJ as impeachment law thickens against Fubara deputy. The story continues on page 6 of The Guardian. Underneath that, we have lingering court order, litigation stray shares $2.4 billion divestment. Lingering court order, litigation stray shares $2.4 billion divestment. Nigeria-Brazil $1.1 billion green project kicks off. AGF lacks power to prosecute electoral offenses, court rules. Dangote to reconstruct Itori cement plant, build Olokola port. Debt servicing fell from $540 million to $276 million, says CBN. Nigeria's inflation sustains downward trend, slows to 23.2%. Jandor returns to APC as PDP describes exit welcome relief. Jandor was the Guba candidate of PDP and the past Guba election in Lagos State. Now he has defected to APC as PDP describes exit welcome relief. From there, we move towards the masthead of The Guardian. Dissociate from El-Rufai's deceptive politics. Southern Alliance wants Obi Atiku. The story still continues on former immediate past governor of Kaduna State's recent defection from APC, the ruling party, to SDP. Of course, enough has not been said about his exit. Dissociate from El-Rufai's deceptive politics. Southern Alliance wants Obi Atiku. The story runs on page 3 of The Guardian. Try to arrest Natasha, anti-democratic CUPP wants. EFCC dogs Chinese Nigerian for alleged $3.4 billion cyber fraud, economic sabotage. That concludes review of front headline stories on The Guardian this Tuesday, March 18, 2025. For continuation of these headline stories, head up to the website of the Guardian newspaper. Even as we move to the next paper on our menu, incidentally the last paper, and that is the Punch newspaper. Incidentally, the Punch is not talking Rivers crisis as its main leading story. It has different story altogether. On the Punch this Tuesday, Niger fuel crisis, customs marketers differ as 400 border filling stations shut. Niger fuel crisis, customs marketers differ as 400 border filling stations shut. Marketers beg federal government to reopen border filling stations as NCS insists on closure. Breast breakfast with Tinubu donates 705 million naira to federal government. Military attacks, electricity workers discos blame federal government, threatening strike. Military attacks, electricity workers discos blame federal government, threatening strike. This is a continuation of the leading story, controversial story of the NAF, that is Nigerian Air Force, and even the military vandalizing, laying siege to Ikeja electricity disco company and vandalizing the place and beating up the staff there. Yesterday we saw video of the footage of that invasion, which was trending on some social media, of the invasion of Ikeja electricity disco company. And the electricity workers discos blame federal government even as they threaten strike. The story continues on page 14 of the Punch newspaper. Still on the Punch newspaper review, Copper who criticized Tinubu under pressure to apologize. Activists. This is also a leading story. We heard that Sowore actually followed the Copper to NYC headquarters in Lagos yesterday, and the NYC officer ran away, was not on seat to receive the Copper. Activists fought Adamawa farmer's death sentence for killing header. Activists fought Adamawa farmer's death sentence for killing header. There's also a trending story on the media. Bauchi youth need jobs. Governor's son tells Sheyi Tinubu. Sheyi Tinubu has been under fire. That is Nigeria's first son, for his comment that his father is the greatest Nigeria's president. Bauchi youth need jobs. Governor's son tells Sheyi Tinubu. Still on the Punch, impeachment move, tension in Rivers as Assembly says Fubara misconduct notice. Above the masthead of the Punch, Wike revokes 4,794 FCT land titles over 6.9 billion naira grant rent. SDF distances itself from 8-10 billion naira fraud probe. Anti-Tinubu coalition, APC orders attack El-Rufai, Atiku as plot thickens. This concludes review of Punch headline stories on the Punch newspaper this Tuesday, March 18, 2025. For continuation of these headline stories, head up to the website of the Punch newspaper to read more. It's also on that note to conclude today's Inside Nigeria, your breakfast show on Leadership Television, where we review fun headline stories of some select newspapers in Nigeria. My name is Winifred Weber, your host on the program. Don't forget to join us same time, same station for another fresh edition of the program. Meanwhile, stay tuned on this frequency for news on the hour. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word. Get ready for the Leadership Awards and Conference 2024. Join us as we celebrate excellence across various fields, honoring those who've made remarkable impacts. Award categories include Person of the Year, Quinquennial Award for Governance and Infrastructure, Governors of the Year, Business Person of the Year, and many more. Stay updated by following us on social media and visiting our website, leadership.ng. For sponsorship and inquiries, contact us today. Leadership Award and Conference 2024, celebrating excellence, inspiring the future.